All right then, let's get started with our disability and screenwriting workshop. I don't think we have. Oh, we do have a new member here. So, oh no, we've got two, I think. So we will go through our little PowerPoint that we usually go through to talk about why we're here. Disabilities are amongst the most misrepresented and misunderstood minorities in the media, and it's also the biggest minority in the world, with about 20 to 25% estimated to be disabled. But that's not represented in the media, and so we want to help change that. The number of guidelines and expectations, all fairly standard stuff. Basically, just be respectful to each other. We welcome all kinds of questions, no matter how sensitive or you think that they are. We don't hold back. I'm completely open to discussing any topics, and I will always do my best to answer them. And we'll work. This is a very collaborative event. It really relies on everyone asking questions and everyone answering questions. It can't just fall down to me, because if it did, it would be an appalling workshop to attend. If you want your script read, then please give helpful feedback to another person on the server. The idea of that rule or that guideline is just to make sure that people are given as well as receiving. And remember that we are all here to learn and improve. For purposes of this workshop, there are 5 types of disabilities: physical, intellectual, sensory, hidden disabilities, and mental health. All are included and all are equally welcome. We've had in the past questions about whether or not we include conditions like autism or PTSD or depression. Yes, we do. Disabilities can fall under more than one category. So autism, for example, would be classified as sensory and hidden. And other, lots of conditions can fall under multiple categories. Oopsie, button. This is one of 2 workshops that we run at the same session each week. We have a disability in screenwriting and disability in fiction, both Saturdays, 4 p.m. 4 p.m. British time, 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern, and we rotate those. So this is disability in screenwriting, where we look at disabled characters in your screenplay. And we might create characters and prompts. We will look at characters in existing TV and film, performance sensitivity readings, and so on. And the next week is disability in fiction, which is a very similar event, but we focus on novels in particular, or actually any other type of media. In both WordCamp and ScriptCamp, we have a disability feedback channel, which is a channel for you to post any work that you want during the week, want feedback on during the week. And I'll finish with our disclaimer. This is a safe space for us to talk about all aspects of disability, which means that we are open to discussing sensitive and potentially triggering topics, including mental health, addiction, trauma, and abuse. You're welcome to leave at any point if things get too heavy for you, because your mental health and emotional well-being always take priority over your attendance. With all that said and out of the way, let us open up the floor to any questions that people might have, any topics or anything like that. Topics.
Do 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 do. Sorry.
No one have any questions or any topics they want to talk about? All right, in that case, we'll go down the list and see what people have. I'm trying to find my notes for someone's script that they were telling me about, but now I've lost it. Damn it. I seem to recall that we had. Oh, Secleton's not here. Secleton was here earlier. Okay. Plan.
Well, if nobody else will, I've got a concept I would want to workshop.
Go ahead, Dan.
All right. Well, I guess it's not the most comfortable thing to talk about. I don't like talking about my past at all. But when I was growing up, I was under the impression I was more ADHD and Asperger's. And so I had thought I had that stuff. But it turns out years later, after going back to doctors, I didn't. I didn't qualify for that stuff. So I guess I kind of grew up under somewhat of a lie. So I don't want to sound disparaging to anything here. It's kind of like a story concept I want to work with at some point.
Okay, so who told you that you might have ADHD or autism?
I think my parents thought I did too. They took me to support groups or like groups of other Asperger people. But even there, I felt like I was different from all of them. Not to be mean in a way, just like, I should probably be quiet before I say something nasty, before I accidentally say something unkind without meaning to, even though I'm not meaning to.
We know. But I understand what you mean. You didn't feel like you connected in. That's not what I mean. There was no like. I'm like me. You didn't identify with those people.
Yes, like when they said they had certain issues, I didn't really notice having them. I mean, I wasn't the most social person, but that's in and of itself doesn't qualify.
Actually, I would say, some kind of story about this could be really good with the right meaning. So one thing I would say is a really, really common a really common thing for disabled people are misdiagnoses, whatever they may be. Now, I myself was at one point diagnosed with schizophrenia and epilepsy, and then I'd see another doctor and say, "Oh no, you don't have that." I got bounced around between a neurologist who said, "Oh, your problems are psychiatric," and so sent me to a psychiatrist, and they said, "No, your problems are neurological." And they kept bouncing me around, and it was me only a few years ago who realized I'm autistic. It fits absolutely everything. Well, autism with ADHD. It fits everything, but I got diagnosed with so many other things. My mom also got diagnosed with stuff. She got diagnosed with shy draggers syndrome and other things, and turns out she was narcoleptic. So misdiagnoses are, I would say, really, really common, and one of the reasons why disabled people struggle and it's difficult to be heard. So a story that kind of hinges about that would actually be really, really good.
It is, of course, you know that I have one real issue, and that's, well, delicacy. How delicate? I was going to say delicateness of this situation. This is a really delicate topic, more so than to writing about someone who has it. Someone who might have it but doesn't is probably even more. You have to really teeter upon eggshells.
Although, playing devil's advocate here, I do know of, well, we were talking about Jojo Rabbit earlier, and I don't know how many people have seen Jojo Rabbit. It's a very, it talks about a delicate topic, i.e. World War II and the Nazis, and, I can say euthanasia, that's not what I mean. Genocide. Genocide. And it takes that quite comedically. So I think that you, hypothetically, could try something like that, where it doesn't have to be serious. Like, yes, it's a serious topic, but it doesn't mean it always has to be taken seriously. Is it really difficult to do that? And really, like, yeah, it is really difficult to make it funny without being insensitive or satirical. And you could do like as Bitterbond says, it could be like satirical. That could be something that you try.
I would say that the thing that separates Jojo Rabbit from difficult, like it separates it from being insensitive, is because we have like the movie is extremely clear into what it's trying to achieve. So because like the main character, it's somebody who it's learning how to get unbrainwashed. So from the propaganda of the Nazis. So it's like I understand that serious topics can be very difficult to talk to. But I guess if you achieve, at least with one character, if you go at it with like a lot of empathy and recognition, it can be achievable, and it can be actually pretty much like celebrated like Jojo Rabbit. That's what we have with the main character. The main character is like he becomes aware of the brainwashing and all the bad deeds that the Nazis used to do in that era, and he learns to basically accept Jewish people as normal people and not as the enemy. I do think that a story about misdiagnosed can be hard pill to swallow. I mean, it's a great story to tell, like Willow said, because a lot of people pass through that, but I do feel like if this ever going to be pitched at some studio or something, or you're going to produce it on your own, it's definitely like it's not the time for that yet. Not the time for that.
Not for me. I am not that skilled.
Yeah, no. Either way, it's just an opinion, because right now, even though movies are catered for a certain audience, you're still gonna have a lot of neurodivergent people watching them, and like a lot of people take seriously into their hands, like they are very into shows or movie medias, and like we're still not ready for those kind of issues for neurotypical people. I don't know if I explain my concept really well. Like we are like in a time where we're trying to make disabled people, like actual people and actual characters who have goals, who have the right to be a normal person in the real life and in media, and just outright making a piece of media going into that kind of like personal issues with neurodivergent people or like disability or disabled people. I don't think it will be well received yet, because there's still a lot of unacceptance in general. So it will be like a movie that will be just like brushed away, or even take as offensive, or it will be not well received.
I fully understand what you're saying, and I like 230% agree. And I'm probably undershooting that number.
Yeah. But that's my opinion, even though I came late, so I don't know all the details. So I am sorry if my feedback's lacking.
Nice. No, it's great.
So, I'll add something that could make a story like this even harder. Unfortunately, I've seen a lot of stuff that are trying to get rid of such terms as Asperger's and high functioning autism, because apparently Asperger was a Nazi. And I don't know, like maybe that's what he called people, but high functioning, they would separate people into high functioning and low functioning, and low functioning, of course, would be killed. And so I've seen like a bit of a movement to try to get these terms to stop being used, but I don't know what is being used in their place.
I think it so for my little understanding, correct me if I am wrong. The Asperger term has been eliminated from the medical book of of mental disorders. So people who used to be recognized as Asperger, right, which is autistic people with high IQ, they were considered geniuses. It's now called Sabat. So it's basically like so when you're talking about autistic person who is a Sabat, it's basically somebody with like a really, really high IQ. And when we are talking about people with per se difficulty with the way the brain interacts with other parts of the body, like for example the speaking part, it's called non-speaking of autism. So they are kind of like, they're trying to add like dividers to identify the different type of autism within the same autistic spectrum. And they're still adding more, I think. But it's kind of like long, and not everybody has the same vocabulary or terms. So, but if you were thinking about writing a different type of autism, it's really needed to investigate these different labels instead of using things like Asperger or other things which has been removed for the sake of inclusivity and basically, like Willow says, stuff insulting other autistic people.
So function almost always just is used to describe people who are non-verbal, people unable to talk. The issue, or one of the main issues with saying no functioning or non-verbal, is that it can often change for each person day to day. So some people who are able to talk, like autism can be quite dynamic. There are bad days where you're not able to verbalize so easily, and you have days where you can appear neurotypical. And also, autism is a spectrum, but saying that it's a spectrum implies that it is a linear spectrum, which it isn't. It's so much more complicated than that. So, those are the reasons why we're moving away from terms low functioning and high functioning. And again, that's, as Willow said, why we no longer use the term Asperger syndrome, because it is it was named after a World War II Nazi, and I believe it was Auschwitz. If it wasn't Auschwitz, it was the next biggest Nazi concentration camp, who would experiment on and torture children. And yeah, he would kill those who weren't deemed suitable for the great new world of Aryan races or whatever. So that's why we don't want to refer to Asperger in Asperger syndrome.
All right. I don't want to take up all the time with this topic, though. I realize we were already 30 minutes in.
No worries. I don't think we have anyone else has any topics in particular to discuss. I'm happy to continue. I feel like we haven't really spoken much about the story. We've sort of spoken about you, but not what you imagine a story to look like, I guess.
All right, then.
So I'm going to assume that your protagonist will be this person who is misdiagnosed. I'm thinking, I'm going to assume that it will be autism that they're diagnosed with at some point. Is that going to be the initial diagnosis or the correct diagnosis that they'll have to get?
I'll be honest, I don't know. This popped into my head like 10 minutes before the group started.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And I know I'm always telling people, start with the characters instead of the concept, so I will realize that I'm doing a hypocrisy.
Fair enough. If you come up with it a few minutes before we started, then I'll let you off, not knowing. Yeah,
I a slight correction. What Dan said. I would say you actually did start with the character. This is the character, and this can have huge impacts on their life and can absolutely be their flaw, their thing they have to work through. I feel like you've already got like half a character. You've kind of more or less got their flaw in that they not necessarily in the misdiagnosis. It would be their false belief. Listening to the doctors or something. And as I said, like a concept like this, regardless of what the diagnosis might be, can hit very, very close to home.
I get you. I would need to think about this. I might not even write it. This is just one of those, like, you're at the fridge, you're tired, and just a random thought popped into your head, and somehow I was able to hold on to it for more than 10 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, definitely think about it more. I think you've got, considering you thought of it like a half hour ago, you've got quite a bit already. You've got the goal and the conflict of trying to get this diagnosis, the conflict.
Right, but the character. But if you say I have a defined character, it sounds like the character is defined by his personality being
I wasn't saying
disabled, not disabled, and I don't really want to do that. And quite frankly, I'm worried that that's probably the truth, and that you might just don't want to say it. And if that's fine, I get it. But I will say it out loud.
I was saying you've got part of the character. But you're right. What I actually meant to say is you got some of the story. You've got the like I was imagining the logline sort of format. You've got their situation, and you've got their their end goal. What you would need now to make this a story is to figure out mistakes and/or a ticking clock. And then you can start working on the character more specifically. So you've got their like an attribute that will maybe make it more difficult for them. But you'd need like as you get past the logline phase, obviously you need to figure out who the character is besides their disability. Yeah.
Got it.
So I'll be honest. The way that I design characters is I do tend to come up with their disability first. And I try to come up with things that they like or they do, their role in society, but that doesn't always click quite right. One thing that actually really helps me to develop the disabled character I'm trying to create is creating a is also creating the world around them. How does that world perceive their disability? Like that kind of helps to figure out how they fit into their niche, because a disabled person is not defined by their disability in any way. You get 10 people with the same disability, you end up with 10 different people, even though their experiences may be the same. But what does kind of change is how they are treated, either by family or by society. That does kind of adjust what their point of view is, if they hide it, or if it may be.
I crashed.
Comfort around what?
I crashed right as you were saying, but what does? How do I know I crashed? Because it said, what duh? And stammer and staggering sound. I am so sorry.
But anyway, it does help to define their personality. So for example, I have a blind character who works on a farm, and he's 50 years old. He is completely comfortable on his farm, and he's very empathetic to the rest of everyone else on his farm. But the moment he steps out of his farm, he is out of his element, and he is absolutely terrified. He will not leave the comfort of the farm because the outside world is scary because of his blindness. And that really helps to develop the character as an individual, is how the world perceives them and how they perceive the world. And it kind of just, it all starts with the diagnosis. It all starts with what their disability is, and then figuring out how others perceive them. So anyway, that's there is no right or wrong way to create a character, but that is my technique.
I got you.
Well, thank you, Eli.
Thank you so much.
Welcome, Bitterbun and Vichikita. Let's open up the topic. Open up the floor to topics or questions about disability or anything that you've seen in the media with disability in. Bitterbun, do you have anything?
Yeah, I brain farted. I am so sorry. I was just like, I had something on my head, and it just disappeared, like nowhere to be found. The little guys living in my head, they lost the memory bubble. They panic and it dropped from their hands. Yeah. I was gonna say if social media counts as a thing, because I have been trying to find some shows or movies about disability, but the ones I found, they seem very odd and kind of insulting. So I haven't quite finished a piece of media with good representation, and just representation in general. I'll give the seats to someone else.
The floor is open. If we don't have any new topics, then we might have to finish early. What I want to do?
Oh, I woke up. I set an alarm to make sure I woke up for this. We are not finishing early. Well, sorry. Okay, sorry. Jokes aside. All right, fine. I will. I will spoil my story that only Joel has seen. I think he's the only one. Okay, so this is a concept I came up with years ago, and I've tried writing it in a few different ways. There's actually some things I could use some help on. And it revolves around the North Pole Christmas elves. So one, building, like, not we see elves in movies and shows all the time, but like we never really get to know what their society looks like. You know, they're just the happy toy makers. They're Santa's slaves. They make toys all the time, and we only see them on Christmas or around Christmas. Well, what do they do with the whole rest of the year? what does their actual society look like? And that is kind of where my story takes place, basically. And today I'm going to be furiously rewriting my draft so that it'll be ready for table reads tomorrow. But I want to portray this world where the public, the human population, they know about the North Pole. It's not some secret. It's not some mythical place. It's a factual place, but it's just for the elves there. And for the record, Santa does not play a role. I don't know whether maybe he is a god or maybe he doesn't exist and it's the elves who do everything. Maybe they change who plays Santa. I'm still toying with what to do with Santa, but he does not play a role in this. So the world knows about the North Pole, and it's all this happy, gingerbread sparkles and fun stuff, right? That we've seen it be. But this is a society of people whose entire society revolves around toy making. And so it is the image of that happy, gingerbready, Christmassy sparkles that they put on. That is not the gritty reality. And so as you go, it's like putting up a camera. What you see in the camera is all pretty, and behind the camera is just ordinary and plain. So it follows this one particular elf, and he has, in what may be the worst possible disability that an elf could have, a super, super rare one that nobody even knows exists in elven society. He is colorblind. That's it. He's colorblind. But no one was able to diagnose him as a child. They thought, well, because he couldn't pass color theory to be able to make these toys, then he's dumb. He's not trying. And they reject him. They fail him over and over. And it does, I do want to, kind of reminisce about children who slip through the cracks and no one is there to help them. And so they grow up believing that they are worthless. They grow up believing they can never achieve what everyone else achieves, simply because of misdiagnosis or because people don't realize what the problem is. Why can't he see the color green? It's right there. The color green is right there. And in elven society, that would be devastating. So he ends up becoming the elven version of a trucker. He gathers supplies, and he drives a flying sleigh to gather supplies for so that the toy maker elves can actually make their stuff. And I also delve into just how much toy making is a hierarchy and its toxicity and stuff. But anyway, that's totally spoiling my story. But yeah, what do you guys think?
I think it's pretty cool. I actually haven't seen so far in my life a colorblind character, so I think it's a really good idea.
I mean, I hadn't seen an elf be colorblind before, so that's a plus. And this like trucker thing you're doing with the elves is interesting because normally all the elves we see of Christmas and everything, it's like this toy making elves and everything, but no one has ever said like where do they get the supplies from? Are they magical and they just poof into existence, or and you're putting like a reasoning behind how they get the supplies. So it's interesting.
Thank you. I will be absolutely honest. That is my number one hang up. Like, I've got all the politics figured out. I've got the hierarchy terms. I don't really know how I'm going to get the supplies. I haven't worked that out yet. Like, that would be an awesome question to answer. And I do want them to fly all around the world to be able to get these supplies from different I don't know, factories. I don't know. I'm still working on it. But yeah, that's the one aspect I haven't figured out yet.
For this project.
Okay, there is one other aspect of this, and it wouldn't even become important until like it was being sold and ready to film or accepted or something like that. And it's something that I really debate. I think it would be really cool if the entirety of this cast, or the entirety of the North Pole elves were little people. And I can see arguments for and about that. We have never had a show that is, or movie, or anything that specifically has an entire cast of people with dwarfism. In fact, people with dwarfism aren't even cast in movies that have dwarves in it. But I can also see arguments against that.
Is this is this like a rant towards Snow White? Because I want to rant about that too. Sorry,
I have ranted about that before. We have talked about it before, but it still pisses me off. And in my personal opinion, I say rant off.
Oh, you're talking about the original or the live action?
The live action.
Ah, yes. I specifically hate that they take away the houses of the dark, minimizing them to mere creatures. Like, there are people who live in a house too, and they build it with their own hands and with so much craft in it, and then they took it away, and now they live in a freaking cave like they're animals. I hate that. What are they trying to say about dark people. I hate it.
Wait, what? Okay. Oh, do tell me more. Please tell me more, because this is something new I haven't heard. I've kind of.
So in the movie, right? In the original, you see that the seven dwarfs they have like a house that they built by themselves, and they have incredible craft. Like all of the dwarfs are crafty, right? In the live action, they removed the house completely, and now all the seven dwarfs they live in a cave.
Yes, in the live action, they're making them live in a cave.
Like if they are animals. Like what? Excuse me?
Oh, that does not help things at all. Oh, this movie is pissing me off more and more and more.
Yeah. It's so horrible the fact that they already decided to cast aside that more than half of the dwarfs are not dwarf anymore, are just normal people, and now the few people who are actually acting as dwarf, now they are making all the seven dwarf sleep in a cave, like they are animals living outside society or something. I don't know.
Well, the living outside of society is fine, because that's basically what they do. But why a cave? What's wrong with their
I
house?
know. I don't know. But I mean, the seven dwarf they do live outside of society, but they maintain traits, right? In here, in the live action, all the seven dwarfs they don't have any communication whatsoever with society. They don't own a house, and they just lived inside of a cave like complete animals. So yeah, I am pretty angry too.
Uh, so the oh my gosh, that movie pisses me off so much. So the issue with, say, having my entire cast played by dwarves, and it takes place pretty much exclusively in the North Pole. Most of it doesn't take place in the goofy outfits, and that's kind of not the issue. But and I think Peter Dinklage was like made a comment, and I've seen this comment often, quite often, but like Disney is saying that because Peter Dinklage said something, then that's why they went the route that they went with their casting, and that's not what he was talking about. The issue is associating real life dwarves with fictional races versus just portraying them as normal average people.
I don't know about you, but most fantasy settings, dwarves are kind of portrayed as badasses.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't matter. They're still not human. They're still not portrayed as just an ordinary human. Yes, they are.
I think there's a misconception. It
Maybe-
depends. Sorry, go on, Dan. I think Dan's dying. I don't know why you're trolling me.
I wanted to add, and you'll notice about something about humans in most of these fantasy settings. They're kind of boring.
Oh, okay. I think there's some misconceptions. I have seen a lot of fantasy media that they refer a dwarf as like mini humans, which is kind of derogatory at some short. But it's in a lot of media, they are regarded as human too, not like as a different race. And it's more like to add them like a type of job. You know, they're usually really good at crafting and at managing or making weapons or armor and stuff. Um, it was the same Peter Dinklage, the one that basically told the world that because the cave thing was supposed to be a thing that they added to subvert the original movie. And Peter Dinklage, when he got the script, he went into an interview and he didn't care if Disney was going to sue him, but he went all out criticizing all the things that they changed about the Darth and why it makes it even more insultive and awful.
What I think that you could do, Willow, with your dwarfs is like say that they are human in a way, but that in this part for some like unknown reason or not even magical reason, and there's like a gene that only lets people have dwarfism between the dwarfs that work, the elves that work in the North Pole, but that's why and they're called elves, they're not called dwarves, so it wouldn't either be, it would, people normally associate elves or with this lanky people or with this like Santa helpers, but if you say that they're their own society, that they have like these characteristics, it tends to happen to a society that there are some genes that repeat themselves sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't be so far-fetched.
No, it wouldn't be far-fetched at all. It would be reinforcing I'm not going to say it's a bad stereotype, but it's an eye roll stereotype. Like for example, I was looking at some reviews of the movie Coda, which is about a deaf family of fishermen, and there were some mixed reviews on it. You know, it was great that it portrayed a deaf family, and it's fairly accurate to how children of deaf adults. There was a lot of relatability, but one of the complaints was music is always an aspect of deaf or movies that portray deaf people. There seems to always be music, and like it's saying that deaf people can't enjoy music, which is not true, or even but like that is kind of the go-to thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing, it's not a bad topic, but it's kind of an eye roll thing from the community and the people who are being represented, and that does vary from person to person. Some people may love it, some may have that critique. It's like a disability ends up getting portrayed in a way of media, and it keeps getting portrayed in that same exact way every time. And it goes right along with the whole, say, like DID being in horror or mental illness used as a villain thing. It's not as toxic and bad as that, but it doesn't show the variety and the reality of people living with it. We just see this one single trope over and over and over and over and over again.
Either way, I think it would have like positive points, even if you feel like it's people are gonna take it that way, that you're trying to portray them as normal, like they are, obviously, and that you're trying to portray them not as like this magical beings, but as this working society that may have some magic, but that still lives their lives, has their problems, and it's like not surrounding them like, oh, look, they're cute and tiny. As long as they're just like, look, this is a society that lives like this. They may look different than what, I don't know, than what you do, in case you are a able-bodied person. But it still has the same problems as you, still is the same human being as you, so it would be better, I suppose, because I feel like in that way you're like trying to humanize something that normally is treated like it's inhuman in media, mainly in fantastical settings. And that I see like a plus.
Okay, thank you.
I think a good way to portray them, if you don't mind, it's just they are just like any other race, you know. It's like so when you see like real life races, right? We have certain features and certain things depending on what part of Earth you are, or what continent, or what country you are, right? I could say that the same goes for dark. You can have like a dark society where they like predominantly you're gonna have dark people, but there are going to be parts where like there are relationship with other races, be it like I don't know, elf or humans or minotaurs, and then you have that kind of diversity in that city, but predominantly it will be dark or elf in this case. It will be doing it the same way as what you just said. It's just more like a gene thing.
Okay, that makes sense. That's true. That's very true. I'm a little bit worried about Joel. He's going to go, I don't know, is he taking a bath in coffee and he's going to drown himself?
Oh no.
No, please.
What a way to go.
Please, no drowning. I mean, unless he has a swimming pool or something. I mean,
A coffee swimming pool.
I do
Get
want
those staves out.
I do have a question though. Would you guys so there is a script that I've been wanting to make for a long time, but I haven't been planning it per se. Would you guys say that if it's a fantasy comic, if per se the heroes of the hero cast, would you guys think that it will be more thrilling um or like scary or exciting? I don't know if the hero cast was disabled or if there were like partially disabled, partially able people. Because I was trying to come up with how to divide the cast, and I was like, okay, shit. If I feel like, so one of the characters, like, she's gonna have ADHD, and I'm like, holy shit! I can already see all the plans like failing, but somehow working because they're going to forget to do some step, and then the whole plan is gonna be a mess. But then, like, somehow it works out, but very differently. I don't know. What do you guys think?
But there's definitely a lack of disabled superheroes. First of all, and actually wish Joel was here because he is writing something as well with. I'm not real sure. I think it might be like a group of disabled magic girls.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly don't know. And not gonna lie, I've had similar thoughts too. The disability part wouldn't be the draw. That so I think it would be cool to have a group of disabled fighters or whatnot. But the key is, who are they and who are they going to be fighting? That is what tends to be the draw. So let's take, for example, Power Rangers.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, I'm basing this on the original, the first generation of Power Rangers or whatever. They switched out the characters a bunch of time, who the Power Rangers were. One would leave, another one they would change. Their personal identities ended up mattering very less. It was the villain who was more enticing, and the fighting, people loved all that. Now I'd love to see, I think it'd be really cool to have that sort of a thing, but still able to differentiate and make the fighting team not so indispensable.
Yeah,
but
it's not going to be. Sorry, continue.
But I think it's a cool idea, but at the same time as building your disabled team, you also need the villain, because that is what is going to entice. The promise of the battle, the promise of the whatever fighting and magical I don't know.
Yeah.
And seeing disabled characters doing that would make it twice as awesome.
Yeah, I think it's. I already did this question before. So basically, the villain, it also has a disability per se. In the sense of like, so basically, what I wanted to portray in my story is that, the villain of the story becomes per se a villain, motivated by, of course, the backstory that it has, but it's more or less like this person is not being like treated compared to the hero pass, which they do have treatment when it comes to the case of mental disorders, right? Because there are so part of the disabled cast is physically disabled, and part of the disabled car is mentally disabled. So I did put this point in, but I didn't want it to make it seem like, okay, this person doesn't get treatment, like they're gonna be a villain, because I don't wanna bring that kind of twisted media again, of basically like making disabled people or mentally disabled people like awful bloody murders. No, but it's gonna be like a very specific case for the villain. The villain is more or less somebody from the past, in the sense of they didn't have any shorter kind of mental health. And the hero cast is going to be more or less like in the present. It's not about time travel, by the way. No, it's not. The villain is just like, it's like immortal, so it lives for a very long time. Which I am trying to investigate a lot, and I'm trying to find a psychologist, because I do want one of the main characters to be a psychology student who is going to be helping within the context of the story to other people per se who has been affected by the villain. Yeah, as I did think a lot about the powers. None of the powers, how to say, um, nullifies or negates the disability. They can be sort of helpful in that matter. For example, I do have one of my characters who is a mermaid, and she has lost one of her she has lost her right fin per se. So she uses magic to make herself like a prosthetic part when she's a inhuman version, which is missing a leg. Yeah, so it's an example. Anyway, I'll let other people talk.
Don't everybody talk at once.
At
Fine,
once.
fine,
Don't
fine.
fight.
I'm sorry, I want to comment, but I left the room, so I don't know what I'm commenting on.
Your coffee shower worked, I guess, Joel. Your caffeinated shower seemed to have worked.
Sorry, I was away, so I'm not sure what I'm commenting on.
Yeah, to do a recap. Yeah, so I was asking, how if having a whole cast of disabled heroes is spread over like physical and mental disabilities will be exciting on the story. Or yeah.
So I've not seen the question. So you've got a story that has characters who are both physically and neurodivergent, physically disabled and neurodivergent, stuff like that. What are you saying? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I basically set an example with so for example I do have so one character has ADHD and she's the one who like comes up with the plans to like in fighting or strategies, right? And then she kind of like forgets or like gets super hyper focused on something else and completely forgets to do something, and then the whole plan just gets messed up, but somehow it works at the end. So like that kind of things where like um disability comes in place, but it doesn't hinder or makes them dysfunctional. So I was asking if having that kind of cast would be interesting for the viewership
It
or
does sound
something.
like
Sorry.
a good idea. So something I've been working where there are disabled superheroes, but we don't see them much as superheroes, but more just regular teenagers. And then the superhero bit is a side plot in a way. No, not side plot. Not that far, but it's not as big as like a superhero movie. 80% of it they are superheroes. I think that is something that is interesting. It's like an interesting topic to see the characters not just going through the big like world ending problems, but also the little problems in life as well. I think that's always interesting to see. That helps build the character.
Yeah, I also did a question. I was talking to Willow because she was giving me a really good advice to focus on the character and on the villain per se, which I also raised the questions that I think I asked in a different workshop. Where so the villain of my story, she also has she's per se neurodivergent, but the reason why she becomes a villain is for a very specific case, her backstory per se, and not treating her neurodivergency basically like aside with all the things that come after with what happens in her backstory turns her into the villain that we have today. So I wanted to like have some sort of like comparison with the hero team and the villain, where per se the hero team they do what the people who has neurodivergency they get help. They basically get treated because one of the characters is a psychology student. Um, comparably with the villain, but I also didn't want it to make it seem like this trope where either disabled people or neurodivergents are the villain just because they are neurodivergents of disabled people. I don't want that. That's not what I'm going for. So I was just wondering if that's okay. I would just not make the villain disabled, but I will think they still will have some things because her backstory it's basically cause for trauma. So it will, at the very least, she will still have PTSD per se because of her backstory.
Okay. I think it would just be, in that case, it would just be really important to highlight that villainy is due to the do other things, so like the backstory, the trauma that they've gone through, or their upbringing, or something like that, as opposed to just straight up their diversion. As long as you've got that emphasized, I don't think it's a problem.
Oh yeah, definitely. The whole character motive and everything that she does, as crazy as it sounds, it comes from a place of basically taking revenge and anger and just anger and disgust towards her quote unquote enemies. So yeah, it comes from like her entire character arc. It comes from that. It comes from everything that she does and everything that happens. Why she moves the story per se, it's because it comes from what she has been through, and since she didn't give herself a moment to basically analyze what she has been through, or having somebody to help her go through that, or being able of like heal of her trauma or anything, basically just leads her to becoming even worse and worse of a person per se. It's like a very specific case, because the villain more or less has this these things that happens to them, this trauma, and then they get like they don't even get to go through their trauma. They just immediately get dropped into like another thing that makes them even worse, and then they go through another thing, and then they go through another thing, and by the time that the villain reach per se a moment of peace, it doesn't take it as a moment of peace. It just, rather than working on herself, she just wants to gain revenge for everything that has happened to her. Which I wanted to make it a contrast with some of the characters, because the characters, the peer cast or just secondary characters, they have gone through at difficult times because of the villain, but instead of just going into a zone of anger and more violence like the villain does, they just want to basically be set free and have let go, live their lives, and like live happily with their family and reconstruct their society and so on.
Okay, I'm trying to figure out where to start, because particularly with the villain. All right, so want to make sure that I am understanding. They are a villain not because of their disability, but because of the way society has treated them. Okay. All right, so this has been a common trope, but
Yeah.
it can. One thing other stories have failed to do is actually address the villain's legitimate concerns. Now, granted, yes, it's bad that they turn to villainy and such, but that tends in stories and whatnot, like society never has to look at themselves to see what they created. They take no steps to make sure the next person with the same issues, that they don't push another person to villainy. I want to find an link because there's a I'll post a link when I find it. But I would say that the concept is fine, that society, because of society's failures, but I would love to see something where those failures are actually addressed and changed. That these legitimate grievances that the villain has are they are considered, and I'm not quite certain how you do that. You take, say, something that might be the equivalent in a real world, might be like eco-terrorists. Their eco attempts and their protests and whatnot are valid, and they are for a good cause. But their methods are bad. And there is a fair philosophical question of, should you listen to people who do bad things in order to change society for the better? Or, or do you dismiss what they are fighting for because they are bad things and you don't want to encourage them from doing more bad things? Now, I don't know anything about British history. Joel, you be my correction. But I have heard like the about women's rights and such, that they were actually gotten by because of a woman doing terroristy things. She fought for it. No one listens and no one gives a woman's right, and she resorts to terrorism, which did indeed give the benefit of rights and such, and it does create an entire controversy. But I think that's the one thing that I want to say. If you write a villain with this backstory, which I personally think is fine, if they have legitimate concerns, then those concerns should also be considered.
So, I think I do plan to address that on the story, but I don't know. I don't know if it's valid. I don't know how to say it. Because so the villain, I don't know if it's valid, which I would love to know your opinion. The villain is from, per se, the human world, right? And they go to the fantasy world, and they basically, per se, end up doing the same that happened to her, but with the society on the fantasy world, which is the reason why they do go through more or less the same things as you went through. But the difference is that when it comes to what the villain has done, the main character, she basically goes and tries to understand the villain, and she understands she ends up understanding her backstory, where she comes from. And since she's a psychology student, she basically addresses what the villain went through and what she's going through and everything. So she tries to raise awareness with the rest of the hero cast and the rest of society, that basically to not repeat the same mistakes as the human world did to her as she did to their society after everything is done, because that would just like not fix anything. I don't know if it's I don't know if it makes sense, if it's valid. So if I have to develop further, I would love to. If you didn't understand what I'm going for, so please tell me. I can just develop them further. Please, not everybody at once.
Um,
I'm not sure how. I don't know if
It's
I have an
okay.
answer.
It's okay. It's okay. Um, we can just continue to move on with somebody else if mine is too complicated and weird, and probably once I have something written down and I showcase it, I probably will get better feedback by at that time.
So I posted a link in the chat. It is about the movie Cars 2, and it does a great job analyzing how a society perceives a an entire population of disabled people, for lack of a better term, an entire community, and how it uses it for humor and for there are some real world comparisons here, and I know it, like the movie just you wouldn't think it would be so blatantly obvious, but it really is. And so it is very much portrayed of cars having a legitimate, disabled cars having a legitimate concern and argument, but being completely ignored. And if they fight back, then they are villainized. And that is treated as a good thing, and society does not change. So I'd recommend the video.
Thank you. I'll watch it after the workshop.
Yeah, it's a longer one. It's like half an hour.
Mm-hmm. If somebody else has something to say, I'll give the floor. Or if they want to talk about any other thing that they want to talk about.
Any topics?
Well, I had this. It's complicated because it is. I already did the first step the pilot episode for this series. The thing is that this character doesn't appear there, but I'm developing him either way. The thing that I have with this character is I made him mute, but I feel like I'm not the best one to do so because I've seen like this like portrayal with people with powers being mute and talking in sign language a lot of times, and I wasn't sure if to do it, but it works for my character. So I was like in a big doubt about it.
So correct me if I'm wrong. So you're concerned that they wouldn't have coordination during fighting because of sign language, or I don't know, or explain it further because I didn't understand. I am dumb, so I'm sorry.
Imagine the character is more like Domino from Deadpool. Like they are really lucky, so there's no like problem with them not communicating that much when fighting and things like that. But the problem that I have is that people are going to say like the same problem that Willow had in a way, like they're going to say like again another like mute character being like a superhero kind of thing because of them. I don't know, it seems like people think that's the easiest way to have a disabled person be someone of power, kind of,
I don't find
because it's
anything.
like the I don't know. Some people say it's like the least complicated way to get someone disabled, and I think it's not. But because of how I wanted to make this character, it worked for me that they were mute.
I don't think there's anything wrong with portraying new characters. I find it very interesting. One of the things that I really wanted to happen on, for example, I really wish in the tale of the Little Mermaid they will develop further a better relationship with Ariel and the prince when she's mute, rather than just like falling in love because of attraction. That is so wrong. I do. I feel like things working out by coincidence, it can happen, even if he doesn't communicate to the rest of the team. But if it happens all the time, like Domino, it feels more like laziness of the author rather than actual writing, because nothing really happens with them. There is no struggle. It feels kind of wacky. It feels very Deus ex machina, like things get resolved by themselves. So, like, not by the characters, but by themselves, which is kind of terrible. You can have issues where the characters are having a hard time coordinating their powers and stuff because they are not capable of communicating with him. But in that case, right, you can solve things like probably like making little signs, not exactly sign language, but it's more like you can create like a secret language in between the teams. So for example, I don't know, if I tap my head, it means like they run away or something. Like you can work around that to make more easier the communication between the team members with the mute person without having to basically stop everything that they're doing to start talking in sign language. or you can like create a device where it doesn't have to be like completely taking away the muteness of the person. It could be something like I think it's very fun if you have like a device with like a bunch of like colors, and the mute character, like if they need help, they can just like press the red button, um uh they get away, they press the blue button or something. I don't know, just not trying to make it seem like I'm trying to come up with something that doesn't nullify his disability, right? Um, yeah, I don't think of anything else. Gonna make the stage someone else.
I mean, I have a way for him to communicate because he's got a twin sister or a twin brother. I'm still debating if it's twin brothers or twin sisters. And they have like their own way of understanding each other. And that's how I got them to communicate with the world. And the thing that I'm playing with is that these characters, I made them with they aren't like superheroes, they're like avatars from gods, like they're chosen ones. And these people are like I named all of my characters, at least the ones that belong to this like cult kind of thing. Their names correspond to every one of the 22 major arcana on the tarot. And these two are like consecutive cards. And they have like their abilities are related to that. So in the end, I'm trying to like correspond with the cards and also like trying to add some diversity to them. But it's been complicated.
Um, sorry, how is that the communicate within a sister? Is something like they speak through their minds or something, or it's like symbols or
Yeah, they have their own symbology for words. Like they understand each other, a different like
also
meaning of things.
so it's like a different sign language.
Yes.
Oh, okay, okay. I think that's okay. That's great. I was worried that you were gonna say something like, "Oh, it's like mind communication," because like that kind of like it doesn't really work with for the rest of the characters, and it feels like it's very convenient. It kind of nullifies the disability if she's gonna be the translator for him. I don't think it's a good idea. It comes down to probably having more people from the cast learning the sign language as well, or at least words that they can use, or they don't have to learn the entire language, but just by learning simple signs to help communicate with him during fighting. So probably like help or um I'm leaving or I don't know, I'm coming or something, or to the left, to the right, etc.
Yeah, that would work. Thank you. um, the other character I'm not having that much trouble with because I have like two disabled characters. I'm having more trouble with this one in particular. But the other character I have is like her. She was. She isn't in a wheelchair because they literally are in the wilderness, so it's a bit tough to go in a wheelchair into a tough terrain. But she's got someone that carries her around. In that regard, she needs like help, but she's a chariot, so she can like. It's not like it nullifies her disability, but she can make like things into vehicles in a way. She can help herself move around even though she's traveling with someone else. She can like deal with herself. But now that I'm thinking about it, I don't want it to be like that much of it nullifying her disability. She's still a wheelchair user in a way, but her power helps her to like move around things without having to depend on everyone else. Kind of that's what I wanted to do with her being the chariot.
So this is something that I've definitely considered myself is for people with certain disabilities, caretakers are a just a natural fact of life. And I see nothing wrong with a story that involves a disabled person and their caretaker. I don't quite know. I think that would take like more research and understanding the dynamic of it. I mean, caretaker can be a family member or such, but at least I believe it's typically someone who is hired, more of like a hired hand or a be specific things. And I know people can get very, very close between them and the caretaker, because that is a very special, very unique bond. And that is definitely something that we never see portrayed. And I think it could be a wonderful thing. I'm just not familiar with the ins and outs of it. The show The Dragon Prince, I think, really kind of did this well. Although then they got rid of it. Sort of. The character Amaya in The Dragon Prince is a military general, and she is deaf. And Lieutenant Gren was introduced. He is her right-hand man, and he would interpret her sign language for other people. But then he went off on his own journey and I don't know if they've ever been together since. But like that show, the way that it was first established, the relationship between these two, it was very, very clear that Amaya was the one in charge. She was the highly capable one. She was the one taking the action. She was driving the plot. And Grin was there mainly to support her and as translator. He also had his own unique character and personality. So he wasn't just a mindless do whatever Amaya said. He was capable in his own right. And I think that dynamic, we don't see enough of that dynamic. And I think it'd be really good, actually.
Then I think I'll continue with the caretaker part of it. if that sounds good. I will keep it.
Yeah. There was there was a series of shorts put on by this YouTuber that of the time he climbed, I think, Kilimanjaro or something, and with a group of his friends. And he has a amputee. His legs were amputated like right below his hips, basically. And so he does have his friends, and he shows how his friends helped him. Like, for example, he would walk on his hands and they would carry his wheelchair for him. But then when they got toward the top, his friends were having a lot more trouble because they needed more oxygen than he did. And they were really struggling with the climb. And that's where he was able to be there for them. So it'd be really cool to be able to see how they can affect and help each other. All right. I know it's a little bit early. I'm actually going to head over to Fantasy Workshop and let's see, because Amanda's not going to be able to make it today. So I'm going to head out, and we'll be seeing you next week.
We'll be here next week. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you.
Later.
Bye, thanks.
All right, bye.